Good morning, my dear friends. I hope you all are doing great. Let you all stay in a pink of health. So let us start our topic for today, which is importance of carbohydrates. My dear friends, there are hundreds and thousands of functions of carbohydrates, in plants and animals. But we'll be dealing with only some specific, functions of carbohydrates here. Some limited functions. Otherwise, this topic is quite vast. So first of all, if we talk of glucose, my dear friends, in case of plants, you have starch, and this starch contains basically glucose. And in case of animals, you have glycogen. Both these are polysaccharides. Can you please focus here? Both these are polysaccharides. So in case of plants, we have starch. In case of animals, we have glycogen. Both are polysaccharides. These will be actually the reserve food. Starch is the reserve food in plants, and the glycogen is the reserve food in animals. So I will say that these are starch is basically the reserve food in plants, and this glycogen is basically the reserve food, focus it in animals. What does it provide us? Starch provides us glucose, and glycogen also provides us glucose. So starch is made up of glucose molecules, and glycogen is also made up of glucose molecules, correct? So both are providing us glucose and glucose. That's why I wrote, especially in human body, our cells need energy so that we can perform many activities, day-to-day activities, like the chemical reactions which are happening in our body. They also require energy. All the organs of our body, all the cells of our body, they require energy, and that energy is provided to the human body, especially by the glycogen. Glycogen is a polysaccharide, and this polysaccharide is made up of glucose, and this glucose is consumed by our body, and the energy is derived, which is later stored in ATP molecules in our body. And when our body of ours needs energy, those ATP molecules are hydrolyzed, means you are breaking those ATP molecules, and then after hydrolysis of ATP molecules, you will get the energy. Let me tell you once again, in our body, the reserve food is glycogen, which is basically stored in the muscles and the liver, correct? Then whenever our body needs energy, the glycogen is basically a polysaccharide. Hydrolysis of glycogen will take place, and it will release the glucose molecules. The glucose molecules will later be oxidized, or we can say that the glucose molecules will be later consumed by our body to produce what? Energy. And that energy will be later stored in the ATP molecules, adenosine triphosphate molecules. It contains 3 inorganic phosphates, which we will study in nucleic acids. ATP concept we will study in nucleic acids later. And then those ATP molecules on hydrolysis can provide energy to our body. I hope you have understood. So glucose as a source of energy for human body. Second thing is we have cellulose. Cellulose is basically a polysaccharide. Obviously we know this guy is also a polysaccharide. It is a structural component of cell walls of plant cell. So the cell walls of plant cells contain cellulose. Now, cellulose as the main component of wood. Whatever the wood you obtain from the plants, okay, or trees we can say, okay, that's used for making shelter, means houses. You can construct the houses, or you can make the furniture like tables, chairs. All these substances like shelter, like houses and furniture can be made from wood, and wood is nothing but it contains cellulose. I hope you understand. Then let's go further. The cellulose as cotton fiber. So cotton fiber contains cellulose, and this cotton fiber is used for making clothes. That means we can use cellulose even for making clothes as well. Correct? Then you have a sugar called as deoxyribose sugar. Okay, it's a monosaccharide. This deoxyribose sugar is a monosaccharide, and this deoxyribose sugar is the important component of DNA. DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. And this deoxyribonucleic acid contains deoxyribose sugar, and this is basically a monosaccharide. This deoxyribose is a monosaccharide sugar, and it is found in the DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. Okay. Then you have ribose sugar. Ribose is also a monosaccharide sugar. Monosaccharide. Okay. And it's the important, okay, I have just important component of RNA I have written here. So ribose sugar as important component of RNA. RNA stands for ribonucleic acid. Stands for ribonucleic acid. This ribo means ribose, and here deoxyribo means deoxyribose. So deoxyribose sugar, once again I will tell you, deoxyribose sugar is important constituent of DNA, and ribose sugar is important constituent of RNA. Okay. Now what is the point? Deoxyribose sugar and ribose sugar both are basically the monosaccharide sugars. Correct? I hope everybody among you has understood this particular thing. There are many more functions of carbohydrates, but I have taken some limited functions. Let me revise. Glucose as the main source of energy, correct, for the human bodies, and this glucose is obtained from the glycogen, which is a polysaccharide, which is stored in the liver, okay, and muscles of the human body, correct. Cellulose forms the structural component of the cell walls of plant cells. Cellulose as a wood can be used for making houses and furniture. Cellulose as a cotton fiber can be used for making clothes. Then you have deoxyribose sugar, which is the important component of deoxyribonucleic acid, and the ribose sugar is the important component of ribonucleic acid. I hope you understood. So with this will be the end of the carbohydrate part. Now after this, we'll be dealing with the proteins. So my dear friends, please make note of this. So my dear friends, let's talk about the proteins here. What are the proteins? Proteins are basically, the name protein, if we talk about, the name comes from a Greek word. This protein name comes from a Greek word called as proteus. Proteus basically means first place. Have a look here. Or it can be also called as primary. Primary, first place, or you can simply call it as important. Like proteins are important. They have a primary importance. Okay? So what do you mean by the protein? It comes from a Greek word called as proteus, meaning primary. Means it has a primary importance, first importance, we can call it as. Important or first place? So proteins are important. In short, in nutshell, we can say. What are the proteins actually? Proteins are the macromolecules. Macromolecules basically means bigger molecules. Macro. This macro stands for big. So, or we can say it stands for large. So your proteins are basically the macromolecules, means big molecules or large molecules they are. And large molecules, obviously they are polymers. So my dear friends, proteins are the macromolecules. Means which molecules? Big or large molecules. And you can also call them as polymers. These proteins are made from alpha amino acids. Proteins are made from alpha amino acids. And these amino acids are linked through peptide bonds. That means if you have a protein molecule with you, let us suppose this is a protein molecule with you. Correct? Let us consider this as amino acid or amino acid, you can say. Okay? And this is also an amino acid. And this bond between them, this amino acid and this amino acid, there is a bond, and this bond will be called as peptide bond. So between amino acids, let me call this amino acid 1, amino acid 2, amino acid 3, amino acid 4, amino acid 5. So this is which bond? Peptide bond, peptide bond, peptide bond. That means amino acids are linked through peptide bonds. I am just giving you an idea because later we will discuss how these peptide bonds are made. But right now, okay, for time being, you have to remember that proteins are the polymers. Polymers means macromolecules, big molecules or large molecules, okay, and they are made up of amino acids. And you know, these amino acids are linked with each other or joined with each other through peptide bonds. In case of polysaccharides, I told you polysaccharides are also the polymers. They are made up of monosaccharides, and those monosaccharides are linked with each other through glycosidic bonds. So my dear friends, polysaccharides are the polymers, okay, which are made up of monosaccharides, okay, and these monosaccharides are linked to each other through glycosidic bonds. In the same way, if we talk about proteins, proteins are also the polymers, means macromolecules, bigger molecules, and they are made up of large number of amino acids, large number of amino acids, and those amino acids are linked to each other through peptide bonds. Monosaccharides are linked to each other through glycosidic bonds and they form polysaccharides. Amino acids are linked to each other through peptide bonds and they form proteins. I hope you have understood the difference. And we will be dealing with this later in this particular chapter. But this is just the introduction. So you should have an idea that your proteins are made up of alpha amino acids through peptide bonds. Second point, if you look here, usually if you look at your NCERT book, you will find out that 20 amino acids are being mentioned there. But when we talk about the amino acids in actual, there are around 22 amino acids, correct? But we have to restrict ourselves to 20 amino acids which are being given in the NCERT book. So look here, total of 20 different amino acids exist in proteins. So we will be dealing with only 20 amino acids. So how many amino acids are present? How many types of amino acids are present in the proteins? 20 different types of amino acids are present in the proteins. Yes, because in bio you may read sometimes that there are 22 amino acids. But here in chemistry, as far as the NCERT book is concerned, we have to restrict ourselves to 20 amino acids. I hope you have understood this particular point. So our proteins are made from 20 different types of amino acids. Please make note of this. So my dear friends, we have spoken about the proteins, that they are made up of alpha amino acids, okay, which are linked together or to each other through peptide bonds. And I told you that we have to study 20 different amino acids which make the protein structure possible, correct? So let's have a look. If I ask you one thing here about proteins which we have to study, I told you that proteins are made up of alpha amino acids. So if I do this thing, proteins on hydrolysis will give alpha amino acids. Because just now I told you that proteins are made up of alpha amino acids which are linked to each other through peptide bonds. So if I do hydrolysis of proteins, I will get alpha amino acids. So now let us understand what is this alpha amino acid. So my topic will be now alpha amino acid. And please remember that we have 20 different types of amino acids in our protein structure, correct? So I took a protein, I did its hydrolysis, I added water to the protein, and protein has given me alpha amino acids. So let me talk about alpha amino acid now. So my dear friends, for every amino acid, you need to take on carbon first, okay? And with this carbon, you can write one hydrogen here. And apart from that hydrogen, you can put one group here called as NH2 group. Then one more group will be COOH, that's carboxylic group. And this carbon will also have one R group. So you have taken one carbon. How to draw the structure of alpha amino acid? So I have written here alpha amino acid, that's my topic. Look here. You have to take one carbon. On that carbon, there should be one hydrogen. We have to draw one hydrogen. Second valency is satisfied by NH2 group. Third valency is satisfied by carboxylic group. And the fourth valency is satisfied by R. So look, this is my amino acid. But look here, this is hydrogen and this group is known as carboxylic group. This group is pronounced as amino group. Consider it as amino group. This is considered to be as side chain. Okay. Now my dear friends, if you look at this structure of an amino acid, why it is called as alpha amino acid, you have to understand. Correct? Look here. Carboxylic group is the strong functional group. Everybody knows about it. And if any carbon is adjacent to the functional group, a carbon adjacent to the functional group is known as alpha carbon. So this carbon is basically alpha carbon. Why? Because it's adjacent to the functional group. Because this is your functional group here. So a carbon which is adjacent to a functional group is known as alpha carbon. This is my functional group. And what is adjacent? This carbon is adjacent to this functional group. So this carbon becomes alpha carbon. Which carbon? Alpha. So central carbon is alpha carbon. What is present on alpha carbon? Alpha carbon contains NH2 group called as amino group. So when you have amino group on alpha carbon, see here, see the central carbon is alpha carbon. Which group is present on alpha carbon now? Which group is directly attached to alpha carbon? NH2 group. And that NH2 group is amino group. So that's why it's called as alpha amino. Alpha amino acid. Why acid? Because it contains an acidic group as well, carboxylic group. So why this carbon is alpha carbon? This carbon is alpha carbon because it is adjacent to the functional group. Who is functional group? Carboxylic acid is functional group. So adjacent to carboxylic group, the carbon is known as alpha carbon. And on this alpha carbon you have an amino group. When amino group is attached directly to the alpha carbon. Amino group is directly attached to alpha carbon. We call it as alpha amino acid. Okay, so I will write down here. Contains, okay, amino group directly attached to alpha carbon of an amino acid. So what is alpha amino acid? It contains amino group directly attached to alpha carbon. Okay, so my dear friends, I hope you have understood. Alpha amino acid will have amino group present at alpha carbon. Look here, carbon containing amino group. Now you will be thinking of this side chain. This R means side chain. Okay, I told you that there are 20 different amino acids. Okay, so if I change this R group, okay, how can I change this particular R group? I can write down different kinds of, groups in place of R. Okay, if I keep on changing this R group, the amino acid will also change. Okay, so if this R group is a side chain I am talking about here, if I have 20 different amino acids, then this side chain, it is of 20 different types. So this R group means side chain, and this side chain, it is of 20 different types. When this is of 20 different types, then you can have 20 different amino acids. So my dear friends, let me tell you once again, if you change this R group, correct? If you write down this R group as hydrogen, let us suppose, H, then it becomes glycine, okay? If you convert this R group to some other group, okay, then it will become another amino acid. So this R group is a side chain. It is of 20 different types. You can have 20 different types of this R group. When you have 20 different types of R group, then you can have 20 different amino acids are possible then. I hope you have understood this particular part. Please make note of this. So my dear friends, whenever you have to draw the structure of a particular amino acid, you have to take one carbon. Then you have to give 4 different groups to this particular molecule. The first thing is you have to give hydrogen, it will be constant. COOH is constant and NH2 group is also constant. This part of amino acid is constant. So this is a constant part. Only one thing is variable here, that is R group. R group stands for side chain. This is side chain. This is not constant, this is variable. So this group is variable. Because I already told you we have 20 different types of side chains, which means we can have 20 different amino acids. Correct? So now this part is constant. You have to write down carbon, then carboxylic part, amino part and hydrogen. These 3 are constant. But this R group is a side chain, it's variable. We have 20 different types of side chains, which means we can have 20 different amino acids, which we'll study later. 20 different amino acids we will study tomorrow. Okay? But here I would like to give 1 or 2 examples so that you can understand it a bit. Let us suppose if this variable group R is hydrogen. If this is hydrogen, we'll have hydrogen here, NH2 amino group we have here, and we have here COH. This part is constant. Now in place of this R group which I have here, in place if this R group is hydrogen, let us suppose, R is equal to hydrogen. So I am putting here hydrogen. This part is constant. So now my R group is hydrogen here. Even I can mention here also R is hydrogen here. Then this amino acid where the R group, this part is constant. Where the R group is hydrogen, because in place of R I am writing hydrogen. This is known as glycine. Okay? In Greek, it is derived from a Greek word. So a Greek word is basically glycos. And glycos stands for sweet. This glycine actually is derived from a Greek word called as glycos. Glycos means sweet. Okay? Now, if I make this R group, which I have here, this R group, if I change, okay? I told you that R group is a variable, it can be of 20 different types. And I showed you one type like here. I made R group as hydrogen. And I told you if R group is hydrogen, it becomes glycine. Greek word glycos is derived from, which means sweet. Now my dear friends, let me remove this. This part is constant. This part is constant. Now in place of R, if I write down this group, CH2, then a benzene ring, then OH. Okay? This is your R group. So you have here R group as CH2. Then benzene ring will be like C6H4 only because two valencies are occupied here and here. Then you have OH. So this is your R group now. When your R group is this one, CH2, then benzene ring and with OH group, it becomes a molecule called as tyrosine. Okay? And this is derived from a Greek word. Okay, we have a Greek word called as tyros. Tyros means it's obtained from cheese. Okay, tyros, the meaning of tyros is that it is obtained from cheese. Okay, so my dear friends, I have shown you only two R groups. First R group I have shown you hydrogen. If it is hydrogen, it becomes glycine. Okay, sweet. And now if R group is taken as CH2, benzene ring and OH, it's called as tyrosine. Tyrosine means it's obtained from cheese. Tyros, Greek word, obtained from cheese. Now you may think that how many types of amino acids will be then there? If R group is of 20 different types, then 20 amino acids are there. Okay? So we have 20 different amino acids which we will study in the next class by changing the R groups. But here I am teaching you that what are the different parts, okay, which can be associated with an amino acid. One is carboxyl group, amino group, hydrogen. This part is constant. In every amino acid, this part is constant. Only this R group will change. And you have 20 different types of R groups. Correct? And when you are doing hydrolysis of proteins, you are getting alpha amino acids. Correct? And what is alpha amino acid? Alpha amino acid means that amino acid which has amino group on alpha carbon. Which has amino group on alpha carbon. You can have alpha, beta, gamma, delta type of amino acids. But here we will be talking only about the alpha amino acids which are obtained through the hydrolysis of proteins. I hope you have understood this thing. So my dear friends, we spoke about two amino acids here. One was glycine and one was tyrosine. And I told you that tomorrow we will be discussing in detail about 20 different amino acids, correct? But let's understand one more point here. If we talk of glycine and tyrosine, you have a constant part like this, COH, carboxyl group and NH2 group, which is present over alpha carbon, you can see. And then variable group is R, and that R is H in case of glycine. Then you have here constant part, carboxylic acid. You can call it as amine group or you can also call it as amino. It's your choice. And now what is here? CH2, then you have a benzene ring, and then finally you have OH. This is your argon, correct? This is your argon. This is your argon, correct? Now, if we look here, if we consider this carbon as a chiral carbon, let's suppose, okay? Whether it is chiral or not, let us understand. I told you last time for chiral carbon, if any carbon has to be chiral, it should be surrounded by 4 different groups. So I write down here, chiral carbon is surrounded by 4 different groups. So let's understand here. Let's call it as this. If this is a chiral carbon, let's suppose. Okay, we have to find out whether it is or not. Let us suppose this is A, this one is B, this one is C, this is B, and this both are same. So obviously this is also B. That means you have 2 same groups here, hydrogen and hydrogen. That means this carbon is not surrounded by 4 different groups because 2 groups are same. Which amino acid is this? Glycine. So it is, this carbon is not chiral, it is achiral. When any molecule has achiral carbon, it is optically inactive. So our glycine will be optically inactive. It will not rotate the plane polarized light because it has achiral carbon. But this carbon, which is surrounded by 4 different groups, is known as chiral carbon, is surrounded by 4 different groups. And now this molecule, this is a chiral carbon here, chiral carbon, and it will be optically active. That means it can rotate the plane polarized light. Let's look at the tyrosine molecule here. Let's consider this as A, this one as B, this one C, and this one D. So this carbon is surrounded by 4 different groups here. So I can consider this carbon as chiral carbon here. Okay, this is our achiral carbon, and it's optically inactive. Glycine amino acid is optically inactive. If we look at tyrosine molecule, this is a chiral carbon here, and it is optically active. So I hope, my dear friends, that you have understood that how can you find out whether amino acid is optically active or optically inactive. So tomorrow we'll discuss in detail about amino acids, essential, non-essential, acidic, basic, neutral, and even about optical activity we'll discuss in detail by tomorrow. Okay? Till that time, have a good time. Yo. Thank you.